Hello, everyone. I'm Becca, dietitian by trade, mom 24/7, wife from the start, and when there's a few extra hours in the day, you might find me hitting the trails or on horseback.
And I'm Kara, a therapist to women, a mom to a boy, an entrepreneur, mountain junkie, and a postpartum runner.
And this is Fit for a Queen, a podcast that's devoted to the female athlete wanting to balance the teeter-totter of all the things we desire out of life as women: performance, health, intellect, and taking time for self, even if we only get 1 minute out of the day.
We're so excited to be bringing you the queens in the athletic world who have done just that. Okay, ladies, take a seat at your thrones, grab your crowns, and welcome to Fit for a Queen.
All right, so hello, queens. We have Dr. G here today, and it is our pleasure. When Kara and I were kind of compiling our dream team list of guests, Dr. G unanimously was at the top. And I'll share her bio, and then I think you'll understand why. Dr. Jennifer Gaudiani, MD. She's also a certified eating disorder specialist and a fellow of the Academy Eating Disorder. She's the founder and medical director of the Gaudiani Clinic, and she's board certified in internal medicine, completing her undergraduate degree at Harvard, medical school at Boston University School of Medicine, and her internal medicine residency and chief residency at Yale. Whew. Look at that bio already. From 2008 to 2016, she was one of the leaders at the ACUTE Center for Eating Disorders at Denver Health, the nation's top medical stabilization center for adults with eating disorders who are too medically compromised to receive care in a mental health setting. She left as its medical director to found the Gaudiani Clinic, which provides superb outpatient medical care to patients of all genders with eating disorders and disordered eating, and to those in recovery. The Gaudiani Clinic embraces treating people of all shapes and sizes through a collaborative, communicative, and multi-disciplinary approach. The clinic cares for the whole person in the context of their values. Dr. Gaudiani has lectured nationally and internationally, and I just had the pleasure of hearing her at the Female Athlete Conference, and she did amazing. Is widely published in scientific literature as well on blogs, and sits on the board of IADEP, which is the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals, as the only internist. Dr. Gaudiani is one of the few outpatient internists in the U.S. who carries the Certified Eating Disorder Specialist designation and is also a fellow in the Academy for Eating Disorders. So now you can see why she was one of the biggest ones on our list, and we're so excited to have her.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
It's ours. So we'll kind of jump in and, you know, in your bio, you talked about how it's very important for you to treat the whole person in the context of their values. And I can remember I'm an avid podcast listener, hence why I wanted to create one. And I was listening to one of your podcasts or webinars, I can't remember exactly. And I always absorb every bit of information that you have to give. And you were talking about how treating mind body as one and avoiding label of diagnosis. And you had a statement in there that was basically you were working with a female and you said, you know, is your energy aligning with your values? And as I'm rushing on to work, it hit me. And I was kind of like, oh, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. I'm burning the candle at every end. I'm not giving the best of what I have when I come home to the people I love the most. And so it really made me go home and start realigning where I was putting my energy and make sure that it aligned with values. So I want you to kind of talk about this a little bit more and how this helps you practice medicine the way that you do.
What a wonderful question. And it's one of my favorite topics. So I think there are a few things that go into this. I am certainly an internal medicine doctor. I'm not a mental health provider, and I don't pretend to be. And I try to really stay in scope of practice. But I've learned so much from my patients and my amazing colleagues over the years. And sometimes what I learn and absorb helps me create a theory of the patient's medical health that does honor them as a full human. And one of the themes that I see coming up very often in patients with eating disorders is the temperamental traits that probably the three of us on this podcast share,
Maybe,
which
yes.
have to do with, anxiousness and desire to perform and desire to do well and to achieve and really being driven from within and pretty hard judges on ourselves and pretty demanding with high expectations. And a lot of those traits are really valuable. They make us achieve and they're positive, but sometimes they push us over that line. And in my patients, when I learn from them about their whole story, if I observe those traits, I ask them to tell me more. And what I often hear is a story of profound lack of recognition of what the self needs and a constant drive to keep achieving despite not recharging the battery. And oftentimes patients will say, and this is, I'm by no means a blame the family girl, but they might say, my amazing mother never took time for herself. So she's so remarkable and she never took time for herself. I certainly don't deserve to take time for myself. I didn't see it modeled. It feels lazy. And what they'll tell me is not sufficient to be getting great grades or to be working in this job or to be taking care of children or to be taking care of a home, but also to be doing all of the food rules and all of the body rules and the exercise rules, and a sense that their joy and relaxation is contingent. That you have to have all those check boxes checked before you can sit and put your feet up and do whatever it is that you do to recharge. For me, it's reading young adult fantasy books in order to it's really sophisticated. But, we all have our ways of recharging. Some people recharge actively, some resting. And so what I came to realize was that we have to talk about what happens to the body when the soul is denied adequate recharge chronically. And everyone has a different capacity for performance, and everyone has a different need for recharge. Very often, one of the untold stories in our patients is that secretly, they actually have a higher than average need for recharge. They need more reassurance and more cuddles and more surround by people who love them and can tell them it's okay, you're okay. And I think a shame can build in patients who have that because they look around and they don't see their friends needing that kind of reassurance. But to be able to be a part of a treatment team that holds that space for them and in part provides that for them, but in part also gives them permission to seek it out and say joy can't be conditional. If you're using your subterranean reservoir of water and you're taking water out all the time and you never let the rains come, then at some point, everyone's capacity is different, your reservoir will be gone. And then your body will fall apart because your soul will say, in the way that it interacts with our bodies in ways that remain mysterious and kind of mystical, even though I'm a Western medical physician, the body will say, the soul will say, I'm done. You've pushed me too hard. So I'm going to somatize. I'm going to give you terrible GI stuff until you hold still. I might even exacerbate your eating disorder and insist on those food rules until you're so weakened, you must seek help because I am depleted. And until you begin respecting my need for repletion, I'm not going to let go of this physical medical stuff. And I think that really can speak to patients. And what emerged from that for me was a great desire, locating myself within my privilege as a cis, white, well-educated, straight woman, that I have access to resources that others don't. It was to say, what can I do in my own life that honors this? Because I got all the traits. I want to do all the things. I want to say yes to everyone as a way of giving back, of showing my gratitude and my passion for this field. And what I'll tell my patients is the old adage, to those to whom much is given, much is expected, always kind of kicked my ass. I knew I was given a lot. And I had enormous expectations of myself. And I came to realize that I could end up a shell if I really kept following that. And then I wouldn't help anybody, not my colleagues, not my patients, not my husband, whom I've been with for 21 years, not my daughters. And so I came to realize that my neo-feminist version of that adage is that any schmuck can work themselves to death. We're really given a lot. The more subtle way to understand that adage and honor it is that you will see your energies as finite. That is, they don't go on forever. Your subterranean reservoir is not endlessly full. And we may all be blessed with pretty good sized reservoirs, but they are finite. And that I will vow to give of my energies congruent with my values. And I always put 3 little fingers up because those are sort of my first and second values are my husband and kids. And then my next one is my clinical work. And then the scroll hits the floor with all the other things I care about. But I realized I couldn't leave 90% of my energy, my warmth, my compassion, my presence at work, and then come home and be crabby and scrabbly and irritable with the people that I purportedly care about most. Mm-hmm. And that meant I was going to have to say no at work. Mm-hmm. And I was going to have to give good enough when it came to writing patients' notes. I would like them to be 3 times this long and be a thoughtful, introspective discussion to make sure everyone's on the same page. But you know what? I'm going to write a decent note. It's going to get the info across, mm-hmm. and I will stop because I'm responsible for deciding how much of my energies I use where. And it really revolutionized my life.
Wow, I love that.
I do love that. And, you know, when you're talking about how when they're depleted the soul, it starts to have physical manifestations. Think about that. GI symptoms, what do? Well, maybe if I start altering what I eat, or maybe I should exercise more, they're not getting down to the root of the problem.
Mm-hmm. That's so right. Very often self-care in 2017 society can end up misguidedly put because you're still doing accomplishment work in what's supposed to be self-care. So if in your heart, self-care is staying in your jammies all day and putting your feet up mm-hmm. and reading books or watching movies or seeing friends or whatever it might be, but you think instead of that, it's more accomplished or productive to go to Soul Cycle, to eat clean in giant, big you know, to a limited extent at first, some of those virtuous self-care tasks can soothe your soul because there's the achiever's satisfaction of doing something that purportedly is just for them, but also is good for them. And I mean, I think exercise is great and eating delicious foods is great too. The problem is when that gets wrapped up into the checklist of responsibilities and it brings with it a rigidity and a lack of insight as to one's overall health and what you actually need. So if you've worked a really, really busy work week and you've gotten a little exercise in here and there just to move your body and be joyful in it, maybe what you don't need is to go have a really, really hyper intense workout and not nourish your body adequately. Sorry. And maybe what you need to do is actually recharge however you happen to recharge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And connecting to those people that you love.
Right.
I mean, working with women in a variety struggles that they're having, they say this, you know, I come home and I'm crabby and I'm overwhelmed. However, I'm still checking my email, my work email. Those boundaries and saying no and giving ourselves permission to actually really connect to the people I love, I think is so hard for us to do. And you make such good points about that.
It's so hard. And I've made a policy now that I don't check email after 5:30 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ever.
Ooh.
And my patients know I'm not going to respond. And that's hard for me to tell them because I want to be present for them. And they're my patients and I have a responsibility, but I tell them I'm not going to respond to email after 5:30 p.m. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to respond to email on the weekends, mm-hmm. including if you have a crisis.
Yep.
Please go to urgent care. As soon as Monday morning comes, I will be there advocating for you, helping, sending records, talking to doctors. It gives me the permission that I need to be wholly present, either with my friends or with my family. And the fact is, I would love to pretend that I am like impervious and I don't need anything, but I do. And without those things, I can't do my work. I can't be accomplished. I can't serve patients. I can fake it for a while my reservoir depletes. But why would I wait until there's a tell in my body? Why not honor in my privilege all of the ways that I am healthy by taking care of myself in the way that I intuit that I need?
Yeah. Yep.
And I really appreciate how you said those that may deny self-care actually may need it the most. How many times are we comparing with the Pinterest moms on Facebook that are doing it all? And when my daughter first started in school, I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I should be making the birthday treats or I should be attending. And then finally you're like, wait a minute. First of all, I suck at that stuff anyway. So why would I even want to devote any energy to that at all? That's just not me.
Well, I was an English major, and my focus was poetry. And there's a wonderful Gerard Manley Hopkins poem, one line of which is, maybe at last, being but a broken man, I must be satisfied with my heart. Oh. And that keeps bringing us back, not to trying to compare ourselves to others, but to be authentically ourselves with our strengths and our quirks. And if we don't do it for ourselves, as moms, as parents, we have to think about what we're modeling for the next generation. So even if I can't wrap my head around doing it for me because it's right for me, a mom might say, I'm not going to model perfectionism for my children. I'm going to model that I'm going to sit here and cuddle them and relax, maybe have a glass of wine, and not go turn the laundry around right now, even though I know it needs it. I'm going to give them permission through my actions to care kindly for themselves.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, I love that.
So you seem to be such the perpetual learner as you share these trends that you see in medical complications or clusters of symptoms, which makes your clinic so unique. A lot of people will seek you out. Share with us how this shapes you as a physician and as a woman in today's culture. How do you actually go and obtain information in a safe manner?
I love that question. It's so thoughtful. I have a few thoughts about that. First of all, I've never been the best information gatherer amongst my peers. And I got a lot of ribbing, Jen, you're a chief resident and you don't know this salient article. No, I'm not that great. Journals. Oh, it's always on my sort of improve yourself in this way list. But I really enjoy learning when it's specific to a patient. So learning in a vacuum, I'm not as good at. And I really admire the people who can pour through the literature and continue to hold that in their head. What I'm better at is when a patient has a specific issue, I will dive down deep, often searching the medical literature specifically for an answer. For instance, they have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome or POTS. I will do a deep dive into the literature to really find what's the most recent article that seems to answer a specific clinical question my patient has. And then in the process of trying to think, how can I convert this from super academic medical speak into a way that a patient personally can really connect with it? How can I turn this into something that eating disorder professionals can connect with if I'm speaking? I find that it sticks in my brain. And I like that translation process. So that definitely helps me. I stay very far off of Dr. Google, whose information invariably is not fact-checked like it needs to be. And one can find validation of any wacky pseudoscientific concept on Google that looks real, the more one looks. So part of being a constant learner is the joy and the humility to be able to say, I don't know. And I really work hard. The residents and mentors that I most admired through my medical training weren't the ones who always had the right answer. They were ones that I knew were smart, compassionate people who weren't afraid in any given situation to say, I don't know. Let me find out. And so I try to hold myself to that standard. And again, it's tough Because, you read the bio and you think like, oh crap, I'm supposed to be the Dr. G who went to Harvard and BU and Yale. I'm supposed to know things. But what I try to do is tell patients I will speak with great confidence on the stuff that I'm pretty confident about. And when I don't know, I'm going to have the humility to say, I don't know, and I'll figure it out and I'll get back to you. And that might be consulting colleagues that I really trust. Sometimes there's not a literature for a question that I need to answer. And so I call a few colleagues that I trust and I say, are you using this? Does it work? What's your experience? That's some of the way that I've come to learn about some of the, I say it hesitantly, alternative strategies that I might use, for instance, for irritable bowel syndrome or for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or for POTS, where Western medicine has not provided an adequate solution. But I really want to make sure I'm giving as good evidence-based care as possible. Then I try to rely on that network of clinician professional friends whom I trust. And, very often I'll tell patients, we'll try something. And if it doesn't work, we'll change it. This isn't the last thing we're going to do for this. I'm going to stay creative. And the other thing is patients send me research. And I have patients, especially who have some of the more esoteric clusters of diagnoses, who've been really shot down by physicians before for daring to go and do a deep dive into the literature and bring up questions. And I really welcome that. I say, look, let's partner. You bring your knowledge about you and I'll bring my medical knowledge and let's see what we can figure out together. And I have the ability, because of my training, to look at a study and say, you nailed it. We're totally going to try this treatment on you. Or, you know what, there's some faults in this study and I'm a little bit uneasy about what it shows. I would rather not go this direction. But I think Western medicine doctors do such a crummy job of sitting in their humility because we're anxious type A people who want to know answers, that I continue to try to challenge myself from the perspective of the part of your question about professional development, to keep sitting in what I don't know and being comfortable, having the distress tolerance of not knowing and of being willing to try to keep an open mind.
Right. That kind of makes us the perpetual learner.
And I was just thinking, you probably have a very different relationship with your clients when they're part of the process, when you are kind of discussing amongst both of you versus this typical hierarchy of a doctor who's all-knowing. And I think that your clients will probably trust you a little bit more when you are saying that I don't know.
I hope so. And I often have to undo years of really unfortunate interactions they've had with doctors. And I respect that trust is earned. It's not, you don't walk in and immediately trust me, and that I have to earn that trust. One of the key themes for my clinic that my team and I set up is non-assumptiveness. So many physicians say, I'm the doctor, you're the patient, here's what you're going to do. I don't stop to listen. And so I really try to bring that values question into my initial sessions with patients to say, what would you like out of this? What would recovery mean to you? What's motivating you? So that I don't assume anything. And along with that non-assumptiveness comes a non-binary philosophy, whether that's around gender or whether that's around what recovery might look like across an age spectrum. Those are all things that I'm leaning into and getting schooled on often because I feel like I do it wrong. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? I just made an assumption. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm sorry. Let's try that again.
Great. Great. Well, at the end, we always like to see how our guests live out the Phit philosophy day to day. So how do you balance performance, health, intellect, and then that valuable time for self?
It's tough. It's tough. And there's days that I feel like I'm really doing a great job of adhering to those values, which are wonderful. And there's days that I know that I've miserably not succeeded. Those are painful.
Those are the wine days, right?
They are. I cannot deny it. Yes, they are. I think that once again, answering this question always has to seat itself in privilege, because the opportunity as a woman on this planet to be able to live out those values recognizes that there are so many things going right that I don't have to worry about or think about. And so I try to keep that sort of first and foremost, because once again, that sort of virtuous competition, even if it's in something as good as, hey, I want to live a balanced life, you always have to come back to like, what are the ways in which I wasn't just born on third base, but I was born right before home plate and fell over it. My children are healthy. My marriage is joyful. I happen to be healthy. All of these things that fit into that. But I love to work out with a trainer a few times a week, because at age 41, I want to stay strong. And my whole goal in terms of my physical body, never having had an eating disorder before, is to stay robust and playful with my kids so that we can ski and hike and have fun. And that's certainly one of the ways that I frame that to them, is never, I'm exercising to change the way I look, heaven forbid. And I really ascribe to a Hayes model, a health at every size model. So that's very vital. But additionally, just, mommy's getting strong so she can play with you. That is nice. I love taking walks with friends. I am what I like to call a dyadic extrovert, which means that I recharge in pairs of two.
I love that. Put that in the show notes.
But, taking walks with friends is deeply recharging to my soul. Making sure that my husband and I get time, just the two of us, either on a hike or on date nights, is something that is sacrosanct to me and keeps me well and whole. And in my clinic life, making sure that we're living our values, that at lunchtime we hang out together. We're not wolfing down something while finishing charts, that we're sitting, we're sharing about our lives, we're commiserating and supporting each other. And then doing things like reading YA fantasy fiction books. Like, my kids are at the perfect age to be sharing series together, and it's like fun. So these are the ways that I try to live this. And really starting this clinic was the biggest risk and the biggest move towards that philosophy that I've ever done in my life. As I turned 40, I realized that I had the opportunity to take this risk. And that if I didn't, because I was held back by my own innate anxiety or harm aversion, that I was losing an opportunity that many other women don't have.
Well, and we'll be sure in the show notes to have contact information for the clinic, because I can't help but see that many out there will want to find a physician like you. You're hard to find.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Kara, any last thoughts?
Wow, I just so appreciate your words. So needed for kind of women and for our audience. So I just appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Dr. G.
Oh, it's such a delight. I'm licensed in many states now, and I do telemedicine all over the country. So I really appreciate both of you with these wonderful, thought-provoking questions, which reinvigorated me, my own themes. I'm like, yeah,
That's right.
stay on this stuff. So thank you. What a wonderful way to spend time.
Our pleasure. Well, we hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you again so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to our sponsor today, Centimano Counseling. Centimano Counseling is the premier perinatal mental health practice in Kansas City, treating mood disorders during pregnancy and postpartum, perinatal loss, infertility, eating, and exercise disorders. Go to centimano.com for further information about the practice and services. For additional information on today's topic and guests, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fit for a Queen. And
Hashtag Fit for a Queen.
don't forget to rate us on iTunes. We can't wait for you to join us next time on Fit for a Queen.
Bye, Queens.